I find myself returning time and time again to Tom McCarthy's 2015 film, Spotlight. Starring Michael Keaton, Rachel McAdams, Mark Ruffalo, and Brian Darcy James as lead investigative reporters at the Boston Globe as they investigate years of abuse within the Catholic Church. The film stays with you long after the credits roll. And I think it's effective particularly because there's this quiet nostalgia to seeing print journalism succeed like it does in this film. It reminds me that investigative reporting can lead to real, measurable change. And given the fractured landscape of journalism today, watching a movie like Spotlight can feel like both a bittersweet relic and a pleading example of the power journalism can have in diagnosing the health of a society. But each time I finish this film, I'm left with a lingering question. How could anything like this happen? How could a community ignore so many warning signs? And I think that's the kind of thing director Tom McCarthy wanted to understand too. As a former student of Boston College, McCarthy had proximity to the community of Boston, which allowed him the space to explore this subject matter without outright caricaturizing the people involved in the story. To quote McCarthy, "The reason I took this project was because I felt like I knew the community, specifically the Catholic community and all the good work it does. There are a lot of good people involved." How does it happen? My feeling is expressed in the film, that the church is an institution run by men, and men are fallible. I think for that reason, we all have to remain very vigilant, and that's our responsibility, not just to follow orders or obey commands, but also to participate in the community. That's what made this movie compelling to me as a storyteller and as a person. So this got me thinking. To participate in a particular in-group is to accept certain aspects of that group. For some, it'll be an adherence to a particular sports team. For others, it'll be a fandom for a particular music group. And in other cases, it might be something like a political party. But in all of those cases, if we're not careful, those groups can slide into a more dangerous form of thinking, called groupthink. To better understand this term, I point you to American research psychologist Irving Janis, who coined the term groupthink back in 1972. He described it as a collective way of thinking that exhibits powerful social pressures that are brought to bear by the members of a cohesive group whenever a dissident begins to voice his objections to a group consensus. I think it's important to pause here and say that not every person who falls into groupthink is inherently bad. To say that would be a gross oversimplification of humanity itself. But it's important for us to recognize that groupthink can happen to any group, and Spotlight is a perfect distillation of the 8 core symptoms of groupthink. 1. Invulnerability. In groupthink, there exists the illusion that the in-group is too big to fail. Throughout Spotlight, the church is alluded to as an omnipresent feature of the community. The church's influence extends to the media, schools, even the courts, and in nearly every exterior shot of the film, there's a church. The omnipresence of an institution can give people the impression that it's infallible, that it can't be wrong, and that will leave it hard to take in criticism as a group. 2. Rationale. Victims of groupthink can rationalize away any concerns or valid criticisms that might come their way. I'm reminded of when Ben Bradley, one of the editors of the Globe, criticizes and shows skepticism for the investigation itself.
I think there's something there, Ben.
Get me something solid or I'm taking you off it. I don't want us chasing our tails on this.
This rationalization, the need to avoid wasting resources for the Globe, helps folks rationalize to themselves that there's something reasonable about their impression and interpretation of what's going on. It allows them to sort of ignore that their moral compass might be misaligned with what the group consensus actually is. 3. Morality. Victims of groupthink believe unquestioningly in the inherent morality of their in-group. According to Janis, this belief inclines the members to ignore the ethical or moral consequences of their decisions.
Listen to me, Jimmy. You want to be on the right side of this.
This is the church you're talking about, Robbie. Look around. These are good people. Done a lot of good for this city. Enjoy the party.
4. Stereotypes. According to Janice, victims of groupthink hold stereotyped views of the leaders of enemy groups. I'm reminded of the way that folks in the film treat the editor-in-chief, Marty Barron. He comes from out of town, he doesn't hold the same cultural beliefs, so he's considered an enemy.
You got a family, this guy?
No, he is not married.
Divorced?
I don't think so, no.
So the new editor at the Globe is an unmarried man of the Jewish faith who hates baseball.
From the outside looking in, Marty Barron is ostensibly a good guy. He's just looking to fix a broken system. But from within a groupthink mentality, he is seen as an outsider and is thus an enemy. 5. Pressure. Victims of groupthink apply pressure to members of the community who challenge the status quo. At this point in the film, Michael Keaton's character, Robbie, is starting to recognize how an institution can apply that kind of pressure, particularly on him.
This is how it happens, isn't it, Pete?
What's that?
Guy leans on a guy, and suddenly the whole town just looks the other way.
Robbie. Look at Marty Barron is just trying to make his mark. He's gonna be here for a couple of years and he's gonna move on. Just like he did in New York and Miami. Where are you gonna go?
6. Self-censorship. There is an avoidance within the group of deviating from the accepted consensus of that in-group. I'm reminded of the parishioners themselves, how they even actively discourage one another from dissenting and looking critically at something.
There was a lot of pressure to keep quiet.
From the church?
Yeah, from the church. But not just the church. From my friends.
Or this clip, which downplays the role these crimes play in reflecting back on the institution itself.
You know, he might not be perfect. But we can't throw out all the good he's doing over a few bad apples.
I'm fascinated by this particular symptom simply because it's so self-inflicted. A few bad apples as a term is inherently an incomplete thought. A few bad apples spoils the bunch. Self-censorship can lead to sanitizing the facts, and the real danger of that is that it can normalize bad behavior within the group. 7. Mind guards. Victims of groupthink often assign themselves as mind guards to protect leaders or other members of the group from dissenting opinions.
Sick leave isn't the only designation they use when they take one of these priests out of circulation. They use a slew of terms: absent on leave, unassigned, emergency response.
You got a word for everything, these guys.
The BC rep is another perfect example of this tactic. In addition to his direct pressure of Robbie, he's present in a variety of other meetings as a conduit through which the institution hopes to maintain the established way of things.
I'm hoping we can keep this between us until we all get on the same page.
8. Unanimity. There's a reliance on consensual validation, or an assumption that the consensus is fact within a group. It allows outside opinions to sort of be deflected away in favor of an assumed reality. The opening scene is a crucial example that establishes this particular symptom. We see local law enforcement, legal representation, even members of the church all participating in covering up decades of abuse.
It's gonna be hard to keep the papers away from the arraignment.
What arraignment?
It's a mentality that requires a total acceptance of looking the other way. The crux of the film rests with its main characters coming to terms with their own culpability in this collective groupthink mentality over the years.
What about us?
What's that supposed to mean?
We had all the pieces. Why didn't we get it sooner?
We didn't have all the pieces.
We had Saviano, we had Barrett, we had Gagan. We had the directories in the basement.
You know what? We got it now.
Robbie, the story needed spotlight.
Mike, Spotlight's been around since 1970.
So what? We couldn't see the scope of this. No one could. Robbie, this started with one goddamn priest.
McLeish sent us a letter on 20 priests years ago. Sasha found the clip.
You freaking kidding me? 20 priests?
When?
Just after Porter, December '93.
We buried the story in Metro. No follow.
That was you. You were Metro.
Yeah, that was me. I'd just taken over. I don't remember it at all. But yeah.
After spending much of the film unwilling to reckon with his own role in all of this, Robbie finally acknowledges his failure to act throughout the years, admitting his faults in front of everyone. The use of Spotlight to uncover these harsh truths is as much a story of assembling facts as it is a story of self-realization. Sure, it took an outsider like Marty Baron to make sense of what was going on, but it took as much self-realization for the journalists themselves to recognize their own fault in the existing system. It's difficult, it's heartbreaking, and it's essential to change. I think Spotlight succeeds in highlighting these institutional failures precisely because it chooses to frame the storytelling around the community itself. Similar to how psychologist Irving Janis referred to folks within groupthink as victims, Tom McCarthy also takes a nuanced stance, reminding us that the community itself, although part of this groupthink mentality, are also victims of the symptoms themselves. And the film doesn't absolve anyone of their mistakes, but it does offer a clear case study of how to avoid something like this in the future. I'm reminded of today's cultural climate and how with social media, we have access to everyone and everything all of the time in these siloed environments that honestly feel a lot like groupthink. And I think it's important for us to be critical and challenge the institutions that we hold dear, because I think those things are essential to making those groups stronger and better. And I think we should be self-reflective enough to acknowledge the roles we play in these kinds of institutions and how we have to hold ourselves accountable to make sure that these groupthink mentalities don't take hold. And when our sense of belonging is challenged and criticism is weighed on the institutions that we hold dear and important to us, we shouldn't ignore it. To be a part of a community is not inherently a bad thing. We as humans strive to belong. But when that sense of belonging runs in contrast to your own moral compass, I think it's time for us to pause, look around, and ask questions. Thank you for tuning in to the first episode of Season 2. Essays on Frame is written, edited, and produced by me, JP Lee. We're looking to drop a new episode every month along with other art-related content on YouTube, Blue Sky, I think Instagram, TikTok, so please come find us wherever you consume fun art-related video. And yeah, see you next time.